Hi, this is Paul. I got a note from someone on Twitter, pretty much out of the blue. First, he apologized for sending me a note. There's no apology necessary. The best way to contact me is generally direct message me on Twitter. Email is difficult and voluminous. Twitter is a little bit easier. And if you're not on Twitter, I don't know what to tell you. You can always try email, but the Google filter doesn't always do very well, and then I miss things completely. I edited this out so it's non-descriptive of the individual, but he'll certainly know what he wrote. And this is actually a compilation of a few things that he wrote me. So first, he apologizes for messaging. He says there's no apology necessary. To be quick, I wanted to reach out as I love your commentary, but as someone who hasn't been able to keep up with the conversation, for example, the meaning, Peterson, Peugeot, etc., I was hoping to ask specifically if you'd ever consider doing a high-level summaries, be it yearly or quarterly. I have promise with continuation, so executive function. So I'll try and do something now. The worldly news tonight did a year-end review. That's probably a good idea. I don't know if I'll do it, but I'll try and do something with it now. I'm a Christian who went to Mars Hill in Seattle during Driscoll. Peterson really landed my faith, but I'm kind of scared of where he is biblically sound and where he isn't, along with his core biblical content. Your voice is one I very much trust, so your overview of any major areas of areas Christians should understand when engaging Peterson's content would really help. No worries if you're too busy, but I had to ask. And I said, I don't want to be too busy for something like this. This is a really good idea, and it's a great idea for a video and could be very helpful because getting feedback from you all is very important. The more basic is bucketing out, I think you probably wanted bracketing out, of the high-level topics your videos of late have fallen under that were particularly noteworthy, so it's easier to pause and pop back into anything missed. The channel is very eclectic, and I make videos over things that are colonizing me now, things that I am working through, and it helps to talk out loud and get your feedback. And so that's why it's the way it is, and it's not systematic. For years, people have been asking that I do something more systematic, that I write a book or I organize a course or something like that. Um, the the shape of my videos is a result of how they have to fit into the rest of my life. In other words, the videos, in many respects, for most part, come last. The church has to come first. The family comes before videos. Now, exceptions will be like this trip that I'm taking. I get a certain number of weeks that my counsel has allowed me to go and do things, and so I have to be careful how I portion them out. So already 3/4 of them is taken this year, 2 weeks in Europe, and then 1 week in the Midwestuary, and then maybe I'll take that last week to do another retreat again at my sister's place, hopefully at a warmer time of year. Every time I go to my sister's place, we freeze. So then what sort of are you looking for? This won't be 10 to 15 minutes. I'm trying to do a little bit of editing now and then and have some shorter content on it. Like I had the King's North, the Infinity King's North loop in not the live stream, but the other two videos in a short and a long one. Then maybe this is a different video. But those who like to stay under scriptural umbrella, meaning staying within reasonable lines of scriptural truth, where are they now? Has Petersonism or Vervaekism gotten closer or further away if there's a new conversation? Does everyone clearly understand the gaps between those isms and how it fits scripture? I know this is probably the toughest ask because the answers aren't simple. They aren't simple. Recently, someone wrote this piece. I have no idea who wrote this. It caught my eye on Substack because I was just scrolling through Substack. And of course, anything that's labeled Jordan Peterson gets my attention, especially something against Jordan Peterson, an archetype of subversion and confusion. Now that sounds very negative, and actually the piece is less negative. I'll put a link to it below. Jordan Peterson is a complex topic. He is. And to his credit, he seems to be quite the complex man. I think that's true too. His reputation precedes him, for better and for worse, and I am certain that this piece will spark inflamed reactions, not like the King's North Infinity Loop, but I'm certain that this piece will cite inflamed reactions for supporters and detractors alike. I do not want to dislike Jordan Peterson. I do not want to have to write this article. We have decidedly reached a point, however, long overdue for our recognition. He must be stopped. I'm not quite sure what that means. There are a variety of avenues open to this kind of critique. Most of them have been trodden before by Peterson's critics. One could object to the vision of conservatism offered by his conservative manifesto, his perceived intellectual stagnation since perhaps 2017, and his belligerent change in tone since the acquisition by Daily Wire, or even the repeated call for people to stop eating vegetables. Now, this is not going to be a short video. I don't have a lot of time, so maybe that'll hem it in, but this is not going to be a short video. This is not going to be a 10 or 15 minute summary. I remember I was on a trip with my wife when David Fuller released this video. Actually, maybe the easiest thing I can do is point to this video. Look at that glorious beard. Paul, don't you miss that beard? The beard was fairly well shaped then, and it required attention and grooming. And it's just so much easier just to keep shaving it off and then letting it grow again, and shaving it off and letting it grow again. But anyway, the video, Understanding the Jordan Peterson Rebel Wisdom Breakup, that gets at some of what this is. Oh shoot. No. Don't do that to me. Okay. I think that these are valid critiques, and there's sources of frustration with Peterson that I felt for some time. This is, of course, I'm reading from the piece again for those who are listening to it and not just seeing me. But was also easy for me to assuage these concerns with common refrain to Peterson's long history of reaching apolitical young men and his skill of pointing them towards living more meaningful lives. This skill was real. I'd go so far as to say he likely had a positive impact on millions of young men and hundreds of young women. Millions and hundreds, not millions and thousands. My contention is not that this movement around Peterson was not real or was not valuable, but instead that Peterson should be understood as an outsider whose ability to reach apolitical secular people is merely effectually helpful. Peterson must not be confused with a thought leader of the conservative movement or to the Christians. Now, this is interesting because basically his complaint is David Fuller, on one hand, was sort of a complaint from the left and saying, when Peterson started out in 2016, 2017, up to 2018, especially 2016, 2017, his eyes were so fresh, they crossed the political divide. He was speaking to everyone, and that was true. I remember those first years, people who were to the left of me were really appreciating Peterson as people to the right of me, and increasingly it just became a certain group much more to the right and not to the left. And so when David Fuller was like basically... He's abandoned. Nobody from the left can listen to him anymore. Now, you could argue whether that was Peterson's fault or the New York Times' fault or however that played out. But here's a complaint from the right, from the conservatives, and from the Christians. And I saw some of the questions of this writer in this piece that I read. This is not to be difficult. This should not be a difficult position to be in. Both religious Christians and political conservatives broadly have many figures who exist in these camps. The entire libertarian movement, for example. Secular but right-wing thinkers like Paul Gottfried are another, and their contributions, when rightful, are admirable. Peterson is troublesome not because he fits into these categories, but because he deliberately obfuscates his position inside of them and attempts to define from the outside both Christianity and conservative as things that they are not. Peterson believes he is like the sun, pulling both Christianity and conservatism into his orbit and shaping them around his gravity into the smooth objects he would like them to be. But Peterson is actually a black hole from which both concepts must be protected. Now, I disagree with this piece. I think Peterson is Peterson. One of the things that, and my platform is tiny compared to his, but I often read comments and it's like, these people don't know me at all. Now I should listen to the comments, and yes, there are a couple of people that I've banned recently. And I gave them 6 years. I thought that was enough. Because I'm really it's really good listening to, well, but my criticism was valid and you turned, and because you silenced me, therefore it demonstrates that my criticism was valid. No, I don't think so. But we almost deal with criticisms. And for number one, I don't think poor Peterson can't catch a break with this stuff. Because if he talks like an outsider, people yell at him. I mean, I just preached, Jesus, what he says about the complaints against John the Baptist and Jesus. And in some ways, he can't make anyone happy. For many Christians, why won't he land the plane on our runway? And for non-Christians, he's giving aid and comfort to Christians. And so this guy doesn't like the fact that Peterson stays outside. I think Peterson is just being honest with us. I know on a live stream recently, someone was complaining that I stay in the middle and this is fake neutrality. And it's like, I don't intend to be in the middle. There's some things that I am not in the middle in at all. But if I tell you what I think, I tell you what I think. And I want to be honest about what I think. So, that's how I read Peterson. I don't think he's changed that much in terms of who he is or what he believes, to answer the writer's question. I think he's changed less than many people would like. Now, the difficulty, of course, is that the Roman Catholics are saying, please land the plane on our runway. And the Orthodox are saying, please land the plane on our runway. And Protestants, they just want to have him have his heart strangely warmed and write his date and time into the Bible. Maybe. So Peterson is Peterson. He has always been, and he's always been fairly enigmatic, very complex. And now, in fairness to this piece, it ends on a much more positive note. And again, people keep telling Jordan he's playing games. I don't think he's playing games. Now, he gets towards the bottom of this article, and he says, Jordan Peterson is not evil. That's right, he is not evil. When your employee is marketing you as a biblical expert, attempts to obfuscate your non-belief in the Christian faith through twisting, turning of Jungian psychology, moves from frustrating to problematic. I think Jordan is just being honest about who he is. I really do. And, he did that interview with Diary of a CEO where he says Jesus is God and the world loses its mind. And I listened to that and I think this is just sort of Jordan. And his wife comments on, I think it was Ruslan, that, sometimes Jordan goes to mass with her. He's a good husband. He loves his wife. Of course he's going to go to mass with her. He should go to mass with her. And he's going to sit there and he's going to evaluate, and he's probably going to keep his own counsel because that's what he's been saying ever since the start. So now, where he ends, on these terms, that engagement can be healthy, but it is these terms that engagement must be understood to take place. It is interesting to consider additional narrative implications of scriptural passages, but to understand them fundamentally in these terms to turn the very foundations of our faith from the inspired word of the Lord to mere watercolors. So that's sort of his negative thing. Now, what I sort of agree with this piece on is Jordan Peterson should not be your pastor. Like, neither should Paul Vanderklay, unless you go to Living Stones. You should have a pastor of a local church who is your pastor, or a priest. And I know they're not the same thing. But Jordan Peterson is doing what Jordan Peterson wants to do. Now, one criticism that might be levied, but I don't think so. Not thinking about it. I was just about to say it, and then about to say it, I said, no, I don't think that's fair either. Someone might say he's just simply a utilitarian who wants to leverage Christianity to help save Western civilization. Now, I think he does, but I don't think he sees Christianity as merely politically instrumental. I don't think that at all, because he clearly also sees, to the degree that I think perhaps he has moved, is I think early on when I'd hear people, we had a little bit more of access of regular people talking to him early on than now. Because the status goes, the distances get further. Early on, when people would come to Jordan and say, boy, you were really helpful, you really helped me, and now I'm going to church, Jordan would often make comments like, there's a little less certain with the church. And I think now he's much more comfortable with the church. And you ask about John Vervaeke, and I think that's the same. Early on, John Vervaeke would say things like, he would question the utility of legacy religions. And I think what has happened with John and Jordan is both of them, by virtue of a lot more contact with both clergy and laity within the church, I think both of them are now more comfortable with loved ones, in Jordan's case his wife and his daughter, being in church. And I think John Vervaeke, with a ton of experience with, with Christians, myself, many other Christians, Orthodox Christians, I think both John and Jordan now feel much more comfortable with people coming up to them and saying, your work has been really helpful, and because of that, I have joined a church. And I am a part of a church, and I have a pastor, or I have a priest, or I have a denomination, or I'm in submission to a tradition, or I'm in submission to an authority structure. I think both of them now would say, amen, good for you. And I think they're both less secular in the sense that they're not as cautious about the church as they used to be. I think that is a change. But neither of them are in church in the sense of, now, Jordan was baptized as an infant, I believe. And so, Jordan, if you'd like to join the Christian Reformed Church, you don't have to get rebaptized. I don't know about you Orthodox. I think the Catholics would take his baptism. So, but I think many churches would be happy to get Jordan, although Jordan would be a very complicated man to have as a member of your church. Fortunately, if Jordan Peterson decides to move to Sacramento, then there might be concern about it. But at this point, I'm not planning on planting a church in Scottsdale. Although, if there are places to move in the United States, warmer and drier would be a-okay with me. I like warm and dry. But anyway, so we're in very little threat of Paul Vanderklay being Jordan Peterson's pastor. That being said, I think Jordan could probably see himself now more than he could 6 or 7 years ago being in a church. I don't know if John could. I mean, Sam mentioned that Hermes conversation that he had recently on Third Eye Drops. One of the interesting things that was in that conversation was John talking to Hermes, however you want to think about Hermes. Hermes basically said to him, John, you are on a dark road back to Christianity. And John said that in the interview. I'm not making this up. You can go back to the interview and listen to it. So that being said, I think John and Jordan are less cautious around Christians and Christianity. But John and Jordan will at times identify as an existential Christian and as a Christian. So there's that. But, even going back to the early interview that he did with the reporter Tim Lott, even then he would sort of identify as a Christian. So I think he's more comfortable around Christians. I think both of them are more comfortable with the institution of the church. But I don't think either of them have seen it necessary to really jump over the line and say, I'm in. To me, I think if Jordan Peterson shows up with his wife at your Catholic church, don't take out your cell phones and take pictures of him. Just let him go to mass with his wife, and leave him with himself and his wife and the Lord. So if you want to bless him in that way. And, Jordan has, from what I've seen, always been enormously gracious and generous with the public since his rise in fame. And he's always been good to people, and he talks about that quite openly. So, but again, Jordan Peterson and John Vervaeke are not Christian ministers. And I made a video recently about all the influencers. It's a very Protestantish thing. But if you want to pursue the Christian faith, you should join a church and go to church. You should do the thing. And watching Jordan or watching John on YouTube, that might be helpful for your journey. You might learn a ton from them. They're helpful for me. I learn a ton from them. I still enjoy listening to both Jordan and John. I don't usually listen to Jordan in anything political. I mostly listen to his videos when he's doing something that deals with Christianity. But that's always been the case when I listen to Jordan. And the same with John. So, and I know John better than I know Jordan. But if you want to pursue the Christian faith, join a church. If you're not ready to join a church, find an estuary that's church adjacent and participate with them. And do your exploration. But John and Jordan are on different paths. And both of them their video content is according to what they need in their own journeys, according to their own lights. That's what it is. Now, questions about, are what they saying biblical? Both the Exodus seminar and the Gospel seminar, I've enjoyed both of them, but they are what they are. And they're also a little bit different. And Jordan, in some ways, his Exodus and biblical seminars and his book tours are analogous to videos like this, where I'm thinking out loud. And I am conveying a message, but a lot of this is just for me. So it's, again, I'll say it again. If you want to become a Christian, join a church. Go to church. Have a real minister or priest know you by name. Get to know you in person. Be under the authority of that church. That's how you become a Christian. Jordan Peterson might have brought you closer to Christianity, might have put you right to the edge. John Vervaeke too, but that's not what they're doing. And don't expect it of them. Now, in terms of Jordan and movement conservatism, y'all are going to have ideas about that. I don't see myself as part of movement conservatism at all. That's just not how I think about myself. Now, do I have some conservative ideas? Absolutely. Do I have some ideas that aren't particularly conservative? Absolutely. All that's fun, but I'm not going to participate in is Jordan Peterson a real conservative fight at all. Because Jordan is Jordan, and I don't think he will be anything. Well, Jordan will be Jordan until the day he dies. And will Jordan decide to, boy, it's just, let me say this. The churches have long recognized that peculiarly gifted people deserve special treatment. And I don't mean special treatment before God, but special treatment with respect to normal church operations. There's an article in the Christian Reformed Church Order, Article 7, which used to allow for ordination for people with extraordinary gifts. Now, that was sort of shut down a number of years ago because the CRC church planting movement decided to use it to get people into the ministry who have extraordinary gifts, but maybe haven't had the chance to go through seminary. Historically, it was tended to be used for academics and intellectuals who might be trusted by the church to teach in the name of the church. And so Jordan wouldn't qualify in the Christian Reformed Church just by virtue of confessional complexity, probably. But he would be that kind of person, someone like Al Walters or Alvin Plantinga. Alvin Plantinga never became a minister of the word under Article 7, but Alvin Plantinga is a publicly well-known figure that I can name and enough of you will hear. That would be the kind of person that perhaps in the Christian Reformed Church could receive sort of instant ordination by virtue of exceptional gifts for the sake of the ministry of the church. And there have long been people like that, and Protestant and Catholic and Orthodox churches handle those people in different ways. But that would require, in Jordan's case, a clear commitment to a church or a church tradition. But I wanted to talk about, sometimes I pull up articles that I disagree with. And sometimes these articles make you angry or hopeful, and that's up to you. You're going to feel how you're going to feel. But the main point that I agreed with from this article is, if you want to become a Christian, join a church. Jordan Peterson might help you decide you want to become a Christian. And as a Christian, like me, he might say things that you find helpful and insightful that provoke new thoughts and new ideas. That's super tremendous, but he's not a cleric. That's the main point. Don't expect him to be a cleric. Don't treat him like a cleric. He's a psychologist. He's got an agenda in terms of politics. He's got an agenda in terms of religion. He's got an agenda to help people. He's got an agenda to redo education. All those are agendas. It's not exactly the same agenda as the church, so don't confuse them. So I don't think I accomplished this individual request at all. Maybe I will at some point, but I hope it's helpful.